Welcome to the DevLab podcast. My name is Mark Chaffey. I am your host for today. And today we are joined by a very exciting guest. Not only is he in a very interesting role today, but I've been kind of stalking this person's career for the better part of 10 years, which we may touch on a little bit today. So today we're joined by Ben Phillips, engineering chapter lead at Marks and Spencer's. Ben has a really interesting journey from startups into one of the UK's biggest retailers. And I've got to speak to lots of startup people, lots of big company people, and very few have I met that have done the journey quite like Ben. And so today we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the role that Ben plays in shaping the engineering culture and innovation at M&S. We'll be talking about scale, growth, impact, and opportunity, and also like how that compares from building and scaling a startup to now building technology that millions of people use every single day. So Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I kind of alluded to it in the intro there, but you've been on this really interesting journey from founding a very successful startup to leading engineering at Marks and Spencer's. What shaped that journey and what pulled you into retail tech in the first place?
Yeah. So I've always loved building things for people. And I realized quite quickly at school I could make money from it as well. So I made some games which I made this card game. It was a kind of a solitaire card game. You get a book. I didn't invent the actual rules for the game, but then it spread around the school, and it was shareware. I don't know if maybe some of the older listeners will remember shareware well, but that was my first experience of making money from things I built, and it was that seeing people use the things that I'd made, and then maybe you can make a living from this too. So I think from that point, I was like always looking for opportunities to to connect the things I loved with how to create a living for me. Started companies. My first startup was a B2B, building sort of community websites for small companies and small organizations. And then built a social media platform for video gaming, which was a passion of mine. But the bigger that got, the less video game time I had. So we ended up building something that we never used. And at that point, me and my co-founder Kieran were like, what do we want to do next? And we were riffing on different ideas, and we were both like, kind of, I like clothes, but I can't dress well. We'd never really done anything that like neither of us had done anything where we were, like retail, where we were selling like a product for people. So like, we don't know anything about fashion. We didn't know anything about retail. So obviously that was the natural thing to do. And threw ourselves in. We went through Y Combinator. We moved to the US for half a year, and learned a lot. And I think one of the things was we brought the things we were good at. I'm CTO. I'm technical by nature, CTO there, and Kieran's an amazing product person, an amazing business person, and brought those experiences and skills to an area that we didn't really know about. And I think that kind of naivety helped us in a way. We came into retail not with preconceived ideas about what could be done, but thinking about what was possible. And Thread was something we built, something that we loved and we needed and we used ourselves. And it's a very selfish thing. We built something that we wanted, but I think that's what you want to do because it gives you that like passion for what you're doing. And luckily for me, it was a problem that lots of other people shared. And I realized then that, as Thread grew, the scale of it was exciting for me. And I was like, what is it that, I can do now to get in front of more people? And, the answer was to grow Thread as much as possible. And, luckily I've ended up at a place that's like multiple times bigger and reaching multiple more people.
I love that. And there's a few things there that you hit on that really resonated with me. I think having that kind of founder naivety as you go into a space is like a blessing in disguise that maybe you don't really appreciate quite at the time. But so many industries are just doing things because it's the way it's always been done. And when you approach things from like first principles or just with that kind of naive view, you can really unlock different ways of working, different ideas, etc. I was in San Francisco for the first time last week and got to go and visit Y Combinator. And for those of you that are listening to this that don't know Y Combinator, I'm sure a lot of you do, I would describe it as the mecca of startups. It's where the likes of Airbnb and Stripe, etc., were effectively incubated. And this would have been 2012, 2013,
2012,
24,
2012,
2012,
yeah,
right? So
summer of
YC is
2012.
maybe only 4, 5, 6 years old at this point, and probably not the behemoth it is today. What was that experience like? How do you reflect on that YC experience?
So many things about it. It was, I mean, overall, it was great. We One of the advantages of it actually was getting the people together. So there was me and Kieran and another co-founder, Ben, and then we had a couple of engineers from our previous company, Playfire, who came with us, and we were the 5 people that started it. And I think that getting together in a house in a different country, nice weather helped. But we would get up first thing and we'd work until midnight, and we did that 6 days a week, and then we had one day for like a bit of play and a bit of rest. But we were together at this kind of very exciting point where we could really go deep on problems, really get to know the user, speak to a lot of customers, and just like really understand what it was we were going to do, and then spend time building it as well, and playing with technology, which is always fun. But the other side to YC is the people you meet. So you go in, you have office hours with the partners there, so the people who have done great things. Paul Burkhardt, who founded Google. You've got, what I vividly remember a conversation with him where he didn't quite get what we were doing, and then when it clicked, he was like, "Oh yeah," and then had like 10 brilliant ideas. And our interview actually with Paul Graham, who was the founder, we'd been thinking about Thread for a while. It wasn't called Thread back there. We didn't really know what to call it, but he was thinking about it for a while. So we'd been thinking about it for a while, and he'd been thinking about it for about 10 minutes in this interview, and he came up with all the things that all the problems that we had foreseen, in these 3 weeks of thinking. So you're with these amazingly bright people and really sharp people who had done things before, who you were mixing with them, getting all their experience, and you could ask questions to them whenever you wanted, but then meeting all the other founders as well. So there's this collective energy where these people were, just as excited as we were to be there, but they were thinking that they could change the world in some way. And, a lot of the companies are doing, things that are, I would say try, but we were selling clothes, right? We were changing how people feel about themselves. Clothes it is a big thing. It changes your the way you feel when you step out of the house and so on. But there were companies there who were actually doing like things with humanitarian things with like clean water, and these people were literally like changing the world for the better. And so being in the room with all of them, where there's just this buzz in the air, was so like energizing. And we got a lot from it. You have to resist, obviously, going to the. There was one of the startups were in the old Facebook mansion from the back in the day. Resist going to those parties because there's a lot of distraction there. But yeah, it's a great place to get energy from, and spend the first 6 months and learn a lot about your customer and what you want to do.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, there's so many great, I call them like pithy quotes from YC, but they actually are so impactful. And Paul Graham, who you referenced, is obviously just a brilliant writer and has this ability to take these thoughts and turn them into a sentence that like just resonate forever and do things that don't scale or build something that people want, and you can just do things. These are such pithy statements, but actually when you go through that journey of being a founder and building, they end up really like resonating into how you actually operate every single day. And I'm sure, at least, what I felt spending a bit more time in the US and meeting people, is it also just makes you a bit more ambitious. It like pushes you in what you can achieve. And I don't know, we have, fun cultural elements of the UK and British culture more generally. And I think there is something quite nice about putting yourself in that environment where you're like, wow, to your point, these people really are changing the world. And hey, you guys changed the way people feels on the way they dress at pretty meaningful scales. We're going to fast forward a decade.
Yep.
And you go on this incredible journey and you end up landing at Marks and Spencer's. Maybe just talk us through that journey of founding Fred to MS. And to me, it's the most quintessential founder question. You've gone from complete autonomy running your business to now one of the most important, significant brands in the UK. Must have been a very different culture. Like, how has that transition been?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, like I had no idea what it would be like. I had my preconceived ideas about large organizations, bureaucracy, nothing gets done, people don't really care about the customer because they're so far removed, that people aren't good at what they do, are not smart, like very like broad stroke kind of generalizations. But I came from a position of like, well, I was able to handpick the people I work with through the hiring and that control. And in a way, you suffer a bit because you pick people who are very similar to you, and you have like this group thing kind of thing that you have to protect against that in various ways. coming to M&S, there's just a massive variety of different types of people. I know you mean like in engineering, I mean across the company. But the first thing that struck me was like, okay, everyone here is actually really smart. Everyone here really cares about each other. And this stood out to me the most because I was like, wow, there's like so much I realized I didn't know about building software. I could build software in a company of 100 people. Building software in a company of like over 60,000 people is very different. And so I was like, right. And this humility hit me. I was like, I've always tried to stay humble. I've always realized that, no matter how much you learn, there's always more to learn. But it came in sharp focus at M&S. I was like, okay, so how do I bring the things I know and have learned? And how do I bring that, I guess, that the thing you kind of mentioned on why I see that ambition, like actually there are better ways of thinking about things or things that you could do that will push you further. How can I bring that, but also use the great things that M&S had? And I think one of the big differences was when you're building at scale for M&S, one thing I realized is you can't just throw software out there and see what happens, right? There's a lot more around the software that you have to think about. So how the business like needs and strategy work with the teams, how infosec work with the teams, how architecture is this much bigger thing because what someone does on the website impacts what happens in the fulfillment center, which impacts what happens in the tills, and that everything's connected. And it's just this huge thing that is fascinating to see how it all works, all these systems and how they all work together. So yeah, I think the first thing I noticed was like, wow, this is different, but I can learn a lot here. And yeah, actually bring some of the stuff and bring some of that, startup, I guess, renegade feeling, whatever you might want to call it, to a big company.
Yeah, I don't know if it's arrogance or naivety that sometimes in the startup community we think of these 100 people companies as like this is the best way to go and this is the best way to build it, and then you get to join a business like M&S that operates at TrueScan. You're like, oh, I've got a completely different appreciation for what it means. Let's dig into that scale piece in a little bit more detail, and I'd really love to understand it from like an engineering perspective. So at Fred you were building for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. At M&S, you're building for millions. And, there's the whole process piece around it, which you just alluded to. But from like an engineering perspective, how different or similar is it when you're operating at that level of scale?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, M&S is like, the vast majority of the UK has been inside an M&S store. It's the number one trusted brand in the UK. It's immense. Fundamentally software, right? You're writing code, you're building one person will sit down and use that in that session. So ultimately you are still having to always consider that there's a person behind the computer, there's a person in the store, your colleague in the warehouse. The software that you're building is still for people. So there's a lot of similarities in that, you have to really think about what it is you're trying to build and how you're going to build it. So the scale doesn't matter when you put it in that context. And then also another, software is about people and teams. I'm going to go to like David Brent. Software is about people and how they work together. As soon as more than one person's working on a piece of software, it's just a different thing. It's about process, it's about communication, teamwork, and so on. And that doesn't change. It's still teams of people building software. So I think where the scale really does change things is when you're thinking about putting something into production, when you're thinking about the rollout, when you're thinking about the commercial side of things. So the impact of what you do is just huge. So you're going to put something into production, right? So how would you do that in a startup? You'd probably roll it out to 10% of users, have some guardrail metrics. Is it breaking anything? Yeah, fine. Let's do it and see what happens in a month, right? You can be that slapdash about it. And actually roll it out to 1% of users, and that's already like more users than Fed had in a week, right? And that is in a day. And that's like, you have to be really considerate about what you're doing, the impact it has on other teams. If you do something which all of a sudden increases the amount of customer support calls that the support center needs to handle, you need to be aware of that. There's a huge impact of what you do. I think that appreciation of the bigger thing that that you're in, that you're part of, really changes how you think about what you build, and it means you need more empathy for the surroundings that you're in, which makes it all like just a bigger problem and a more challenging problem, but it's more exciting in a way. You're not just like, you're a bit less isolated. It's not just you and the customer, it's you, the customer, and this company that you're in. Yeah, and the impact, the amount of people you can reach, millions of people within an hour of you shipping something. You've just got huge amount of data, huge amount of insight of how that thing's doing, and That's cool.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like a lot of people that go into founding a business, it's all about having an impact, and actually being able to see that impact on an even bigger scale than what you had before is super cool. And there's a few things that came to mind as you were talking. Facebook's very famous move fast and break things probably doesn't work quite at the scale of an M&S, but definitely works kind of in that earlier stage startup. But something I want to dig into there, you kind of talked around like, as soon as you've got more than one person building software, right? It really is about the people. And I'm really intrigued about how you've seen the engineering culture at M&S and the impact that that has on building a great product versus different environments, smaller environments that you've been in the past.
Yeah. So one of the things about the culture of M&S is it's very supportive, and I don't mean that in a kind of like, everyone's like, hey, how you doing kind of way, but it's you're like, right, I need to get something done. How am I gonna get this introduction? But in that stage, how am I gonna find out which teams to talk to? How am I gonna understand like the impact in the business and who the right people to get their input in this thing are? You just say, hey, I need some help with this, and people will like say, like, this is where you go, this is what you do. And I think that does point to some of the work we have to do in like improving discoverability of like teams and systems in M&S, which we're putting a lot of effort into at the moment. But in a way, it points to the fact that you can really create a kind of working group, a team of people around something very quickly. And in a startup, you've got the people that you work with, you know exactly where they are, and it's the same people each time. And occasionally you might work with someone in like Thread, we had the starting team, we had the data science team, but you knew them all. Whereas M&S, you're meeting new people all the time, and learning about different ways of working. And I think that for me still creates like, it changes like every project I work on is different, and I'm learning more. And so there's that like, yeah, continuous like feeling of newness in what we're doing. So yeah, that's one of the things that stands out for me. And I don't know if that's the same for everyone across digital and tech org, but it is something we're trying to promote in mobility and so on, as it is, I think, a way to keep things fresh and keep learning and growing.
Totally. I entirely agree. And I'd love to maybe double click on that internal mobility piece. I think one of the things that surprises me about a lot of the companies that we work with is they almost do like internal mobility and moving engineers and people around by accident. It's like, if somebody proactively puts their hand up, we'll move them. And then they're surprised why in 2.5 years people are leaving because they want to go and find a new challenge. And you go and ask them, oh, so what is that challenge? You're like, wait, the team over there, you could be doing something similar or you could be pushing yourselves in new ways. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you as a team are thinking about really promoting that mobility across different teams and why it matters so much for that growth and development of individuals.
Yeah, it's something we're passionate about. A lot of the answers I've given already is like it's about that learning. It's about that experiencing different types of people, different types of different teams. So not only if you have mobility, let's talk about the benefits of it first. You have mobility, you experience different product teams, different software teams, right? So different engineers to work with, maybe different tech stacks, different ways of working, which is great. But then you're also looking at different parts of M&S, and M&S has got a lot of moving parts. You can be working in a warehouse on robotics and logistics. You can be working on the online, on the website, on the app. You can be working on the internal tools that we have for colleagues, the internal development platform that we're enhancing. There's lots of different things you can do that have different types of people you're building for and different types of the business that you're working with. So the benefits of it are just like continual learning and growth in that way. The other thing is that it keeps things interesting and fun. Right? If you're in the same team for a long time, you get bored eventually. Like one of the great things about a startup is it's growing and it's changing by default all the time as it gets bigger. But in a company like M&S, you can feasibly be on a team where you're kind of just keeping things going and ticking along. You're always trying to improve and so on, which is good, and that keeps things fresh. But in a way, you want people to be curious about what else there is. And so we promote mobility in quite a few ways. We advertise all our open roles internally first, and we promote them. So we've just, as part of the engineering chapter, which we kicked off in my new role a few months ago, we're now going to be posting regular updates about roles that we have available internally and encourage people to apply for them. And I think one of the key things here is the process for people to apply internally needs to be really fair. because you want everyone to have the same opportunity for those roles, but also like never really a negative experience because people can like they get excited about something, five people apply for it, only one person can get it, and you kind of want not competition, right? You want that like people to be going for multiple people going for the same role. But then what happens if the person that doesn't get it? You need to be compassionate about what that means. Maybe there's a development plan for them. Maybe there's something else for them. Maybe you push them to do different things to get maybe some experience they need to step into that role. So we're very conscious about the experience of the engineer throughout that. I think if you do those things and it becomes a cultural thing that it's just expected and celebrated, then you've got this environment of people moving around, which creates that feeling of that people can do things like this like fluidity, but it also encourages teams to not rely on the knowledge in people's heads all the time, which is a common problem in big companies where you know, how does this thing work? Instead of saying, here's the documentation for it, it's like, go and speak to Jill, go and speak to Bob. And like, it encourages teams or it forces them in a way to create that documentation, create a great onboarding experience, which works then for new people coming into the company and allows people to, allows teams to then, deal with that fluidity a lot better.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that you really hit the nail on the head when you describe it as like creating the culture of mobility. When I see and listen to companies talk about mobility and it fails, it's often a cultural issue. Like a manager blocks somebody's move because they don't want to lose that person from their team, or it's like there isn't that that proactiveness of promoting those roles. So if I'm an engineer listening to this today, I'm excited because I get to work firstly with yourself, secondly at this incredible scale, and clearly in an environment that cares about people. But if I'm also an engineer listening to this today, I think this is maybe the first podcast I would have listened to that's 20 minutes in, and those two magical letters of AI haven't come up. And it's clearly the topic of the moment. You guys obviously rode an amazing wave with kind of mobile and smartphones and everything that happened there. And what we're seeing in AI is like possibly, probably even more exciting. So would love to just dig into it. What's your view more broadly, but also like, what's been your approach day to day? There's obviously, I'd argue probably the strongest product market fit in AI right now alongside chat is in the code gen tools with your cursors and your co-pilots, etc. So yeah, we'd love to just hear your view on landscape of AI, but more specifically, like how are your teams leveraging it day to day and your approach?
Yeah. Yeah, big topic. I so if you look at it in terms of what it can do for building software, right? Let's focus on that because that's I think what an engineer at M&S will experience day to day, and an engineer anywhere will have to experience it day to day. And I think if people aren't right now using AI in some way, or at the very least today, exploring like how it can tomorrow, they're going to be left behind. And yeah, so our philosophy, I guess, of use of AI is that you can be prescriptive about sort of the software development lifecycle in some way, but even at M&S, different teams have different like needs, and a team who releases to the tills, they're going to be releasing very irregularly because there's a physical rollout required there, for example. Or a team that's shipping to the website has CI/CD every 10 minutes, whatever. And so with AI as well, you can't be too prescriptive about, this is how it should be used for two reasons. One is that it's different for different teams and what they're doing, but also what's good today, tomorrow will be very different. And it's, the rate of change and improvement. I went to bed too late last night because Sonnet 4.5 came out. I had to give it a go. So these things are like coming out. Claude Code was the darling for a bit, and we had Codex, Windsurf, Cursor. They're all like good at what they do. And I think what's kind of happening is we're seeing it's going a bit like this, and the big players are catching up with each other quicker and quicker. But what's good today might not be the best tomorrow. So our philosophy on this is we need to not have a strategy for AI and engineering that determines what people should use or what processes they should use. But the strategy is we need to be agile. We need to be able to respond to changes, to new paradigms in software development. And so we do that by, we partner with Microsoft and GitHub. So we have GitHub Copilot. We have a great agreement with them where we get, early access to a lot of their new things. one of the things we're doing internally is one example of it as part of our engagement program is have a use cases demo, show and tell, where people in the company were like, "Hey, I've been using this thing, and it was a release yesterday, and I've found I can do this with it, and it's helped me with this." People are like, "Oh, that's cool," and then we just have this culture of like sharing the latest and greatest, and we're creating a directory of these things. We create like prompt directories and so on. And I think that the whole point of all that is it's not going to be up to us, me as a as a leader, or even the leaders in the teams themselves. It's the engineers who come up with these new use cases because they're the ones who are really curious. They're the ones who are using the tools day to day and playing with it. So in a way, we want them to be able to tell us like what is the thing to do and how to use it. And so yeah, like giving them the environment to be able to play with this stuff, to test it out, in the software development lifecycle, but also people are using stuff at home where they're trying some really crazy stuff. Like someone said, "Yeah, I was playing on my home server and I've got a RTX 5090 and I installed this thing," and I'm like, "That's cool. Do a demo because we can't do that here right now, but it's really cool, right?" So yeah, that like this is not. There's no end game right now. We don't know what it's going to look like, so we need to
Yeah.
be ready for it.
Yeah, totally. And I think you mentioned a few things that really resonate. Like one is that curiosity, right? It's the engineers that you want to be curious and playing around with this stuff. I think any top-down mandates of you have to leverage this tool, you have to do this, often fail because it's like, well, why? What is the benefit to it? And internally, we've seen like super interesting use cases, not just about engineers, but like our growth team leveraging NAN in really cool ways that they've just done completely organically because they're like, oh, I've got this problem. There's a new way to solve the problem. Great. I'm going to go in and try something new. And I was telling the team on Friday, I think it's like the most paranoid inducing time because like the rate of change is so quick, right? And
Yeah,
it's like every day you wake up, you're like, what's happened today? What's the
yeah,
big release? What's going on? But it's also the most exciting time I've ever been involved in technology. And I think that
yeah.
the opportunities ahead of us are going to be mammoth. And AI is obviously taking up 99.9% of the oxygen in the room right now. Are there any other things that you're excited about? And it could be actually applying AI, to the use case of M&S. But when you think about kind of your roadmap over the next couple of years, are there any technologies that you're like, oh, that's going to really transform the way retail and is done and the impact on retail?
Yeah, I think from going like 20 minutes without mentioning AI, we're going to go heavily into AI now. But but to your point, like we've talked about AI in engineering, right, and how engineers and product teams use it in software development. But then if you look at how AI can enhance and improve other areas, it's everywhere. And we look at say in our fulfillment centers, Donington, our big one. We've been doing robotic stuff and automation for a long time, but warehouses are not deterministic perfect places. You have things fall over and things different shapes and sizes. So AI is really really useful to round off those edges and allow robots to adapt to things and to different situations that may not have, the edge cases that may not have been considered by the programmer. And then other areas in the warehouse, like um, visual inspection of goods. So it's a very human thing. Like, is this damaged? Is this pallet ready? Whatever. And having visual inspection done automatically saves a lot of time, allows people to focus on more strategic stuff. What else? I think something that I've been following for a long time because of my history is like the virtual try-on, virtual dressing room functionality where you can see what an item of clothing looks like on you. And I do remember the very, very early years of Fred, like some of the I think it was an Xbox thing, which was hilarious, but it was basically just like a t-shirt overlaid on a photo. And it's a lot better than that. Now you can see like the item like flowing on you, like if you're wearing a dress and the dress will like flow from your body as from your body shape. And that really does, like, the disconnect between wearing the item and when you order something online and then you try it on, it's always quite like can be quite jarring sometimes. Narrowing that is such a massive opportunity because of return rates and unit economics, but also giving customers like the opportunity to really get closer to your product without if they can't get to the store or they're unable to do it as regularly as they want, to get close to your product a lot earlier and a lot easier. So yeah, I think that's gonna be quite a game changer one day. We're almost like it works okay. Like it's really impressive, but to have it for all your products in a way that fast moving items is there's still work to do, but we're getting there. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is just AI, I'm afraid, and it's like scanning of shelves for where people go around the store saying looking for gaps, looking for low stock items. You point a camera at it. We've actually done a lot of research to this at M&S. You point a camera at it and it knows. Like, it'll say like this is empty, this is moving quickly. Helps with your forecasting, helps with your stock take, helps with your your prioritization of bringing things from backstage and so on. So there's a lot of stuff which is all AI. But there's probably other stuff that all comes to
No,
mind.
no, and something I hadn't really appreciated about M&S until hearing you talk today is like the variance of technology that you get to work on, right? It's almost like 4 or 5 different businesses in of itself. You've got logistics and robotics and that whole piece there. You've got the consumer side with an app and a website. You've got the physical tills and I imagine some challenges and that whole world, the shelf space that you just described. And to see not only AI, but just more broadly, like the opportunity for engineers to be able to come in and rotate around such different contexts. Like you would typically have to leave an organization if you wanted to go from like a really big consumer product to then looking at like the logistics and the robotics element of it. Which is like fascinating one from like an engineer's perspective inside M&S, but two, as a leader, like getting that visibility around different areas and seeing like, oh yeah, AI is going to increase the purchase rate because it'll make better recommendations and it's going to reduce the return rates because you can
Mm.
digitally try on these clothes, which actually maybe creates a stronger emotional connection with our brand digitally, has all these other things. But then also we've got some pretty cool robots that are doing some
Yeah,
crazy things.
yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah.
the breadth of technology on offer it's kind of surprised me. Even though I know M&S pretty intimately, just listening to you talk.
Yeah, I still come across like areas that I hadn't really, had to focus on. And it's also like sometimes you're like, wow, that's really cool. Like, you need to shout more about what you're doing there because like people will want to hear it. So we're again encouraging more of that in the chapter, like just demoing and showing off, just so that internally is, because like you're surprised, I am still surprised by the amount of things that people get up to here. So yeah, we want to share that internally more.
And as we come towards an end, I think a really hot topic, and you don't need to give your view direct on it. If you want to, you can. But, what does this AI mean for humans? What does
Mm,
it mean for roles, etc.? And I
mm,
think clearly, and I think really importantly, like today we actually started on people and culture. And, we've had the pleasure of speaking to you a couple of times now, and it's clearly very obvious that you are very focused on people and culture. And it's like a really big part of kind of your leadership style and how you think about building products fundamentally. It's not just about writing loads of code. It's not just about being empathetic to the user. It's actually like the people that are there building the products every single day. And so I guess how have you seen that evolve from startups to M&S from a culture perspective and the leadership lessons that you got to have at Fred being a founder and that kind of evolution into MS and kind of the engineering community that you're now building at M&S?
yeah, it's hard to answer that without repeating myself in some ways, but I think like being really open to new things and realizing that it's not, what you know right now isn't gonna be the answer necessarily. It'll start you on the path. Um, I've come to M&S and it's taken me like, it took me about 2 years to really appreciate what it is that I needed to do more of here to get the most out of the team that I'm now working with and leading. If I'd have come in straight away and been like, yeah, I know what I'm doing, it would have failed. Like I would have had a very rude awakening, I think. So I'm talking about this for my evolution because it's very relevant to I think what I've always like not known, what I've learned in the past as a leader is that you have to adapt, you have to be constantly open to change. I think now more than ever, as we've been discussing with AI, it's going to be a very, very fascinating period of time for engineering. But ultimately, like we like the AI is going to change what we do. We're going to be more, we're all going to be building more together, and there's going to be less, less distinction, I think, between sort of engineering and product, right? And that rewards the curious people, and it rewards the people who care about the customer and the care about the craft. But ultimately, like what I really believe in is that if you're just consciously open to change and open to learning new things and trying new things and innovating and giving people the space and time and environment to be able to do that, no matter how big the company is, ultimately they're going to surprise you and delight you with what they do. And we've got some way to go in M&S that where we have that across the board, but it's just fundamental, like to how I believe teams should run and live. They should be constantly thinking about what's new, what's available. They should be able to test things out and try stuff. They shouldn't be held back by red tape, except where it's necessary, of course. And they should be rewarded for the things that they do that succeed and the things that fail, because that's how we get to the point where we're doing something different. So yeah, I think that's a common theme throughout. Like we're never there. We're always like, there's a phrase that our CEO Stuart mentions a lot, positively dissatisfied, and it's like it talks to like continual improvement and never resting on your laurels. I think that's something that I believe teams should always be and people should always be doing. Like, what is the next thing we can do to get better?
Yeah, I love that. Positively dissatisfied. I'm stealing that. That is brilliant. And I might trademark Ben's 3 C's of building with this crazy AI world: curiosity, customer, and craft. That feels like a really great focus for anyone right now thinking about what does this mean for me, and not just in engineering, right? You could apply that in sales, you can apply that in marketing, you can apply that in finance. If you're worried, and you said this earlier, right? Like if you're not playing around with these AI tools, you better start, because they are coming. It's inevitable. But if you're curious, if you're obsessed about the customer and you really care about the craft, these are just tools that are going to enable us to do what we were able to do before on steroids. Which again, why I think it's probably the most exciting time we'll probably ever get to experience in building technology.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. It'll be fun.
It's going to be wild. So closing out, looking ahead, you've hit on so many interesting parts about MS and your journey, and clearly, like I said, this obsession around people and culture and creating the right environment for people to be successful. This breadth of technologies at M&S that, I thought, I certainly didn't appreciate. And it sounds like you're still learning more about. When you look to the future, what excites you most about kind of the future of engineering at M&S? And I appreciate it would have been lots of the stuff that we've already touched on.
No,
but yeah, would love to hear your thoughts.
yeah, I mean, yeah, as everyone's aware, it's been a rough year for us. Like, and I think if I go back to March, April, it's like no one saw what was coming, and it was difficult in quite a few ways. But I think one of the things that coming out the other side of it, there was just like a resilience and a determination for the teams to get back on track, because this is M&S, and the love that people have for the brand led to people doing some like immense work, which we are rewarding them for and recognizing, because people really did go above and beyond. But coming out the other side, it's very easy to be like a bit like, we're done now, right? But it's kind of the opposite. There's this optimism and energy in the air here. There's a like, how can we recover to a point where we're better than before? This is an opportunity to actually really come out and accelerate. And we're gearing up for one of our best peaks ever, best Christmas ever. We're putting a lot of time and effort into, I've mentioned about the engineering experience, the developer experience, and I think that's reflective of the fact that the leadership have given created the engineering chapter and given me the autonomy to do this work. It shows how much value they have on engineering and how much they believe in the future. So yeah, like, it's exciting for me because personally I've got the chance to shape things here in a way that I think is going to be really beneficial to the company. But I love, and the reason I do this job is I love creating environments for people where they can do their best work and they can be happy and productive. And so, yeah, I'm giving everything I can to do that. And like, we've got a chapter roadmap, which is just full of things to improve the developer experience here, to improve how teams work together and people work together. And yeah, I think, selfishly, it's because I it's what I love doing. But we've got the opportunity to do that, and we're accelerating on that. So that for me is, I think, the excitement that I have. I hope the team are getting it. So, I'm doing this for a few months now, and it's we're feeling it. I'm feeling it, and I'm seeing a lot of positive results from it already. So yeah, that's the exciting future for me.
Dude, I love it. If I was in the team, I certainly would be excited. I think when I hear leaders talk about creating an environment for people to do their best work, it's just like the best type of leaders you can work for.
Yeah.
Ben, this has been an absolute pleasure, dude. Thank you so much for your time. And if you're listening and M&S sounds like an interesting place, definitely go and check out their career site. A bunch of hiring going on right now in the engineering world. Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure. Cheers.